one of 10 states that has not expanded Medicaid. Wildly popular, gives 1.4 million Floridians access to health care, also saves us a bunch of money, gives us a bunch of potentially jobs, really just helps the whole state. So as Stefan said, we are in the process of collecting petitions. We need 880,062 valid petitions, essentially by the end of the year. This is what the current petition looks like. I'm going to preface by saying it's about to change here a little bit, but really the only change is it'll have an additional section for the last four of your Social Security or your driver's license number. Make sure that the voter's filling everything out themselves. We have a system set up of hubs throughout the state where you can have access to blank petitions and just someone else who knows what's going on that you can talk to. We do still definitely need more, so if you have any ideas, please let me know. And as of right now, all completed petitions should be sent to this address, and you should make every effort to try and drop them off at a hub or mail them in, as soon as possible, really, but ideally within 24 hours of collection. We run volunteer training calls 3 times a week. They are quick Zoom calls Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturday. And all of the upcoming opportunities that we know about are posted on our Mobilize. If you are sharing other events, if your organization or other organizations that you work with are posting events where you'll be collecting Medicaid petitions, just go ahead and tag them Medicaid expansion, and then they'll automatically show up on our listing as well. We're also happy to always post any events that you would like where Medicaid expansion petitions are going to be available. We're also always looking for healthcare stories. If you have a story that you are willing to share, please let us know. We're always looking for those. They're just a really essential part of humanizing this issue and explaining why Medicaid expansion is really vital. All right, so now into the legislative piece here. HB 1205 was signed by the governor into law on May 2nd of this year. This new law limits citizen-led amendments and creates hurdles to make it harder and costlier. So I really want to emphasize, does not make it impossible. It does, however, make it harder, right? And a little bit more expensive. Some of the legislation went into immediate effect upon him signing it. Most of the rest of it goes into effect July 1. So here's what the process will look like in 2 weeks. I just want to preface that it's in 2 weeks. So if you're going to be at Lake St. Pete Pride this weekend, you can still collect the way you've been collecting. Not a problem. But starting July 1st, like I mentioned, the form itself will change. So all blank copies of the previous form should be destroyed on June 30th, and everyone could switch to the new form on July 1st. I want to stress that blank petitions are safe. I know that there's a lot of scary things out there about what the legislation does, but blank petitions are completely safe. Anyone can print them, store them, sort them, distribute them. However, the caveat is that starting July 1, no individual may gather or collect more than 25 signed petitions without being a registered petition circulator. So what does this mean? Starting July 1st, we are actually going to switch to distribution rather than collection. That is, rather than collecting any the petitions, all you should do is distribute them to voters and have them send them in themselves. You should not collect any signed petitions, should not return them to any of the hubs. Instead, we are in the process of ordering pre-addressed postage paid envelopes that we're going to send to all of our partners, including all of you. And you should provide these envelopes to the voters so that they can submit their own petition. Again, these are, the idea is now you cannot touch any signed petitions, even if they're enclosed in an envelope. And just as a side note, these will be going to a new address for auditing, which we will get here in the next week or so. But again, just really want to stress, we can distribute, we cannot collect starting July 1st. However, there is hope. Florida Decides Healthcare with Southern Poverty Law Center and the Elias Law Group as our legal counsel filed a legal complaint pretty much immediately when HB 1205 was signed into law. On May 22nd, we had our first preliminary injunction hearing and went before Judge Walker. And the result of that was we didn't get everything we wanted. However, the court did block one of the worst parts of the bill, the vague, over-the-top criminal penalties around racketeering that would have made it really difficult for everyday people to get involved with the campaign without worrying about getting into trouble. So we're really happy about that. Going forward, we have also filed a second preliminary injunction for the parts of the law that become effective July 1st. The hearing for that is scheduled on June 30th, so we don't expect a ruling by July 1st. So we know we're going to have to follow the new regulations for a couple of weeks, but our hope is that after those few weeks, we will get an injunction and we'll be able to return to the process as it was previously, where we could actually collect the petitions. That said, the bottom line is no matter what happens with the litigation, our operations are going to continue. We're going to keep having petitions come in, right? It is imperative that we make the absolute most of these next couple of weeks before it becomes a little harder to gather as many petitions as possible. I know a lot of you were out helping last weekend. I know there's a couple opportunities coming up with Pride and Juneteenth. It is really essential that we get as much as we can now, just so that we're in really good shape ahead of the July 1 changes.